Which of the following are mistakes? H naught is true and we reject it. Yeah, that's obviously a mistake. If something is true and you reject it, so one is a mistake. H naught is true and you fail to reject it. Well, that's not a mistake. If something is true, you better fail to reject it. Fail to reject is kind of saying that we accept, but again, we don't want to use a very strong language that we accept. We just say fail to reject. H naught is false and we fail to reject it. That's a mistake, that something was false, but you fail to reject that. You should reject a false thing. So 1 and 3 are mistakes. And actually, you can make a note of it right now that if H naught is true, so we figured out that 1 and 3 are mistakes and they have special names. If H naught is true and you reject it, that is called a type 1 error. And if H naught is false and you fail to reject it, that's called a type 2 error. Okay, the level of significance alpha is the probability of making a type 1 error. And the probability of making a type 2 error is called beta. So alpha is the probability of making type 1 error. Beta is the probability of making type 2 error. So we don't have type beta error. It's type 1 or type 2. And one memory aid is that alpha is the first letter of the Greek alphabet. Beta is the second letter. So alpha goes with the type 1 error. Beta goes with the type 2 error. If the null hypothesis is rejected, when the null hypothesis is true, that's a type 1 error. I just remarked that in a couple of problems ago, that if H naught is true, but you reject it, then it's a type 1 error. If the consequences of making a type 1 error are severe, would you choose the level of significance alpha to be 0.01, 0.05, or 0.10? So remember, alpha is the probability of type 1 error, and if the consequences of making a type 1 error are severe, then we would like the probability of that error to be very, very small. We don't want that to happen. So we would take the smallest possible, which is 0.01 among these three. Alex hypothesized that on average students study less than the recommended 2 hours per credit hour. Which of the following is the null hypothesis? So null hypothesis is something that will have equal sign in it. So it's either going to be A or D. So let's see the difference. So A is talking about mean and D is talking about percentage or proportion. Now it says hypothesize that on average students study. So he's average, corresponds to the mean. So he's talking about average of 2 hours per week. He's not talking about a percentage or proportion. Examine the given statement, then express the null and alternative in symbolic form. High school teachers have incomes with a standard deviation that's more than 22,250. So remember, null should have equals of this thing. Standard deviation should equals to this. So A has that, D has that, and F has that. And then the alternative is that the standard deviation is more than. Remember, whatever is more or less or not equals to, that's alternative. So here it's more than, and more than means greater than, so it's going to be this one. Null is always equals, and alternative is whatever you are investigating and you are um, or claiming, you are claiming it that it's more than this. Okay.